Hey, welcome to TYT RotoWire. I'm Heather Ankeny alongside Michael Shure from the TYT Network, Chris Liss, rotowire.com. Beating the book here going into week 8, but week 7, you guys, you tied.
Yeah, we were both
You
2
and
and
Ben
3.
tied.
That's 40%. You could not pick 40% right on an entire year. If you tried, you'd get higher than that. Okay, there's no way you could pick intentionally 40%.
Right.
I'm now at 500, which means at random, if you were to pick at random, you'd have a 50% chance of doing better or worse than me.
Right.
But anyway, I'm going to make these picks with complete earnestness and zeal.
Did we go over your picks from last week real
We
quick?
went to the same high school, and you just said earnesty.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry
ahead.
to drag you down with me.
That's all right.
Okay, so I had the Jets. That was a brilliant pick. It was great on Thursday. I felt very good about myself for 3 days without having to have that contradicted. They almost won outright. I had the Jaguars. They won outright. That was a great pick. I had the Panthers. They didn't show up. When the Panthers don't show up, they don't even fake it. They just don't even show up. Giants plus 5.5. I told you it was a bad idea, Michael. You disagreed. But actually, had Larry Donnell not fumbled, they may well have covered. If had he not fumbled twice, they may have even covered it in a garbage time.
Had anybody not, that's what happens when people fumble. Had they not, would have gone the other way.
But what I'm saying is there's variance and there's getting crushed.
Right.
You don't say in the Panthers game, well, had these touchdowns not happened and that touchdown in each running play where they got 8 yards to carry, when it's a turnover, it's just like, okay, whatever. And the Bills -4, I felt that was a little bad luck in that too, so I don't think it was a terrible pick. They ended up winning the game outright.
Yeah.
So
And it's one of those terrible situations where you're excited because that was a great play at the end of the game. Orton to Watkins, big finish in Buffalo, but you gave the 3.5. You're like,
I gave 4, but
Or 4,
either
yeah,
way,
you gave
they
4,
weren't
yeah.
going to get like an 11-point touchdown,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But the thing about certain games, you got to realize certain games are just wrong. The Panthers +7, that was wrong. It doesn't matter what little, it wasn't a game of inches or a referee call or whatever. And there's certain games where you're like, okay, there were 2 turnovers early, that's what swung it. I'm not going to go, when I look at the process, I'm not going to reject that process. I'm going to say, that was a decent pick, it just didn't pan out.
Right.
So Carolina was not a decent pick?
It was a terrible pick.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michael. How did Ben do?
Did he make some terrible picks?
Well, Ben made some picks, and he did similarly. He did. He went 2 and 3. He had the Titans plus 4.5, and it was. It had to have been one of the duller games the other day going in. You thought that it was going to be a disaster in terms of watching the game, and I don't think you were disappointed, but. All the things that you didn't expect to happen, like Colt McCoy coming in for the Redskins and them losing. So it was a good cover. I always like getting 4.5 for some reason. I like taking
that particular
number. I
number?
like that point number because I think that it's sort of if the game's a blood. There's no real mathematical logic to it, but gambling history and observing, it's always seemed like if with 2 bad teams, you'll see that line. And 4.5 is outside of the field goal, outside of the low. It's a sort of a good margin for a low-scoring game with bad offenses. So I've always.
Do you know historically teams getting 4.5 have covered exactly 46% of the time?
Is that right?
No, I just made it up.
But it sounded really good. I was like, wow, great.
I didn't believe you.
But I don't. It's not necessarily.
Well, 46.5 would be like way above my average. So that would have been the one gambling thing that I know.
Lying.
The Colts. Okay, I'll stop lying. The Colts giving 3. I mean, that was a blowout, 27-0. Ben took the Colts because they were playing the Bengals, and he is not a Bengals buyer at all. So I don't think his reasoning
Doesn't have credit. It was a reflexive move that happened.
It was a reflexive move. He didn't think that it was going to be 27-0. He just knew the Bengals were playing that game and they were playing a good team. I'll take the other team.
Right.
Wow.
That's how.
But that team looks that good team, by the way, looks really good.
Well, the Bengals offense without A.J. Green and Marvin Jones and Tyler Eifert is not a top 30 offense.
I don't know.
So, I mean,
But for that score?
Hold off.
All right.
I mean, 2 shutouts.
But they might be good.
2 big shutouts in the NFL in a row against good teams. I mean, the Giants and the Bengals were both shut out. That's unusual, and that's because they are offenses. They're not. Eli Manning's
and that scary Cincinnati Bengal defense.
Yeah. Well,
and didn't look real scary.
Well,
but anyway.
Right.
All right.
They held them to under 28. The Raiders at home on the thought that Arizona's defense has not been as good as advertised, unclear about how healthy Carson Palmer is, but they're still the Raiders. And even though the game was somewhat close for a little while, you see a spark in the Raiders, but they're still the Raiders. I would have made that play. The Giants, again, we discussed, and the Houston Texans I thought was a horrible pick. My favorite pick of the week was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You did like the Steelers last week,
yeah,
but it was total garbage. I mean, they were 13-0.
It was garbage. I mean, it was
ridiculous.
It was a strange set of circumstances.
But the Steelers did dominate after that. I mean, they did have sort of a run.
They had a good second
Yeah,
half.
they did. Okay.
Who
So Ben was
do
2
you
and 3.
who you have going into this week then?
All right, this week I've got 6 picks and I've got to choose 5, and they're going to be at random. And I guarantee I'm going to leave out a winner, probably the only winner. But I'm going to do this anyway. It's complete earnesty. Okay, so let's do it.
I like earnesty. Let's go with it.
I'm taking the Pats at home against the Bears. I know it's kind of a bounce back desperation game for the Bears. They've been better on the road this year. I just think New England is tough at home. They had a close loss. I think they're getting together. I think they're going to cover that.
But Chicago is they're fired up in that locker room. Did you read all that about Brandon Marshall and I don't know.
Yeah, he's pissed. I mean, he's pissed at his quarterback. So this is a rise up game for Jay Cutler, and can he rise up once in a while?
Yeah, he may play well. I mean, I'm taking New England. I think the line should be just a little bit bigger than 6. Anything under 7, I think there's a good disparity in those teams.
Yeah.
Brady should carve them up. I'm taking Detroit in London. I think Atlanta is on the ropes. I think Atlanta, normally I like a team to bounce back that's been beaten up, but I just think the offensive line is so banged up.
Bad. Yeah.
And you have Detroit, who has just a nasty defensive line.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be a turn. This will be a turning point, but it's just one of those games where the matchup looks really ugly, and it's only 4. It's in London. It's on a neutral field.
They probably won't have Calvin. They may not have Reggie Bush this week.
Right.
So it's that's a little bit of their weaponry gone.
And Stafford's below average without those guys, in my opinion. But Atlanta's D can make anyone look good.
You're not a big Stafford fan.
No, I'm not. I've been fading him for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. I also like Carolina in this game, in this week, because they were so beat up. I like to buy low, and they played well. They're really herky-jerky. You never really know who's going to show up.
And they're getting 4.5.
Yes,
and we know what that means.
And Seattle does 4.5, 46%. No, that was not actually a real stat, just to clarify. But I like Carolina because Seattle, to me, it's not just watch Seattle flex their muscle. They might. But they were bad. Yeah. And I had the Rams this week, because Seattle really didn't look good against Dallas. It wasn't just, Dallas got lucky. It was Dallas should have won by 20 in that game because they cannot protect Russell Wilson and they don't have a pass rush. And Carolina's desperate. Seattle wins, they'll scrape it out by 3, in my opinion.
And the Charger game, when Seattle lost to the Chargers earlier this year, that a lot of teams went to school on that because they did everything right against Seattle, and I think that's what the Cowboys did.
Yeah, but that was 2 trick plays two very tricky plays actually that they beat Seattle with.
That the Rams needed. And the 4th and 3 fake punt is just a heroic call that coaches most would never make. The Rams aren't going to make the playoffs. What a great way to go out and win the game.
You know all the risks that someone like Jim Fossil's kid would do, right? I mean, having
back
been
in the day when he was the coach,
when he was the most conservative coach ever. There is that, but the Rams are also not as good as either the Chargers or the Panthers. So the fact that they did get lucky, they had to get lucky a little bit to beat any team. Forget the Seahawks; they would have had to get lucky or do some trick plays and execute them well. So
to me the Seahawks are not the same team that they were, and then
which is weird, but
is exciting.
But every year that's how the NFL goes. I think I'm going to skip the Arizona one. I had that, but I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I hate buying high off the win, and they weren't that impressive. But I'm fading Indy on the road. I just think Indy stock is so high. And it's just been every week, Indy. And he keeps winning. It's killing me, right? But the whole point about the spread is it prices things in and adjusts. And I know Pittsburgh's kind of a public team, but Indy is a major public team. I'm taking Pittsburgh. And I don't think that Cincinnati game was a good barometer because of how poor Cincinnati's defense and offense are right now.
What's that Pittsburgh line?
It's 3 at home. Pittsburgh's getting 3 as a home team. My final pick is a little crazy, but I'm taking New Orleans as a favorite at home against Green Bay. It's a disgusting pick to take the Saints, who are horrible, against Green Bay at late points. But they're way better at home. Green Bay's way inflated based on their blowouts the last couple weeks. Yeah. I think this is a game where New Orleans pulls it out by 3.
I like that pick a lot. I would throw good money at bad and take Tampa Bay as well, off the bye, reinventing themselves. They were supposed to be a better team than this going in. Yeah. Now they have Glenn and they're coming off the bye. I think giving 2.5 to a Minnesota team that's a disaster right now. At home is a good play.
I'm going Minnesota in that, but not strong on it.
You're not strong. I would. First, I would either not go for that game or.
So did Ben take that, or who do you want to go over Ben's picks here?
Ben took the Washington football team
The
plus
pigskins.
9.5.
That's what he likes to
I
go
mean,
with.
is 9.5 ever enough to give Washington? Well, last week it would have been against Tennessee, but then he's got Jacksonville plus 4.5. There's a 4.5 rub there against Miami. So I think Miami is a team on the rise. I think Jacksonville is starting to play better. And you were talking earlier about Denard Robinson and how bad teams make changes. I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars want to be able to not make changes, and I think Robinson's going to be a fixture for a while anyway this season. And then go back to Ben's picks again. The Rams plus 6.5. That goes against what you were saying, right? Didn't you go against St. Louis with Kansas City?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, he's taking 6.5 with the Rams in Kansas City. I wouldn't touch that game, but I would go the other way. The Falcons.
This is the one he's going opposite.
This is the one
me.
he's going opposite you.
Oh,
And
good.
I would be with you there, Chris, because I think that their offensive line is college. And then the San Diego Chargers plus 7.5 at Denver. I knew he would take that, and I think
How do you read that? In reading bet. Is that the
in
right
reading
pick?
bet, I mean, I could have. I actually today I would have taken. I mean, I know he'd take Atlanta because they're going against Detroit. That's a gimme. And
Right.
I knew he was taking San Diego because they're going against Denver, and he thinks Denver's inflated at home. I don't know. I would not bet against Denver. They might cover, but I wouldn't bet against Denver in Denver now after seeing how well they're playing.
That's a stay away from me.
That's a stay away.
Yeah, totally.